And for my third video, and by the way, there's going to be a little short fourth video that is mandatory today. It's very short, as in maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes long, but I got to include it because I just had to. Some of these people decided to go on strike to join the protest, and they don't have a job anymore. I effing love it. Okay. But peakprosperity.com has a freaking fantastic article by Chris Martenson, the mother of all financial bubbles, will be unimaginably destructive when it bursts. So this kind of goes in line with what I just got done talking about with Martin Armstrong and the 1988 cover of the magazine, the Economist magazine. This whole bubble and bubbles within the bubble were designed to become bubbles to begin with, to become unsustainable, so that they can prick that baby and throw us into the one world system. But we always have to feel pain. That's usually how it goes. If you don't feel pain, why would you ask for change? Make the pain stop. What pain? There's no pain. Everything's fine. But when they give it, remember the old, what was it called? The Indian burn? You do on the arm? Indian burn, something like that. Now I feel pain. I need it to stop. How do we make it stop? We need to join this one world currency. No more, we're going to level the playing field. It's going to be fair for all countries. No one could be labeled a manipulative currency. It's great. It's fantastic. Okay, if that's what it takes to make the pain stop and to save my pension, imagine if they do that. Everybody, your pensions completely restored to their max. We got to join this system, though, for that to be there. Which I would argue then, well, where did you get the money from if we're joining this new system with the new pension stuff? And you're able to just throw free money at these pensioners to get them to say yes to join this currency block of the world. Where did the money come from? In that case, you could use your own money to do the same thing. Right, so I don't even know that they'll go down that path. They just want us to feel pain, and the pain might be pricking the pension bubble too, and saying it's not getting fixed, you're not getting it back, but if we go to this one currency system, it'll solve a lot of these problems. Anyway, so they give themselves a little kudos in the beginning, and I think rightfully so. This is one of those sites or people here that have followed things for a long time, saw the thing standing out, saying this is going to be a problem, check this out, we don't believe this, etc. This is the real deal, and then sure enough, it comes. He said, at peakprosperity.com, we pride ourselves on providing fact-based context to breaking important events. Within 72 hours of the Japan tsunami in 2011, and I'll actually add myself on this one because I said the same thing too. I saw right through this. We had analyzed the situation and concluded with high probability that 3 core meltdowns had occurred at the Fukushima nuclear plant, while it took years for officials to finally admit to the extent of the crisis. History has validated our initial analysis. How did we get it right? By using a science-based approach, grounded in observation, dedication, and to a healthy skepticism of what the experts in charge claimed. We also went to great lengths to educate our readers about the science in play, explaining in detail how radioactivity and contamination differ, and the health effects from such a nuclear accident and what concerned folks could do to remain as safe as possible. So he also says that when the California's authorities suddenly reversed course and scrambled to evacuate nearly 200,000 residents living downstream of the Oroville Dam, within an hour, we had released an analysis of the situation explaining the critical differences among the primary spillway, the main dam, and the auxiliary spillway. Again, they're saying we cross our T's, dot our I's, we look into things. When the expert comes out and says something, we don't just say, okay, thanks, and leave. We analyze what they said. Why are they saying that? What makes them say that? Which is great because that's what I do. Especially when a so-called expert comes out. I've now learned be completely skeptical of anything they say. So, not truth until proven wrong. You're proven wrong till I find the truth. So what you say I believe is false until I can be proven otherwise, or it can be proven otherwise that you are actually truthful. So, anyways, he said, just to give a little preface about why he's saying the mother of all financial bubbles is coming or is here. We got that right. We got that right. We got that right because we use a scientific-based approach. Again, that's the same thing I do. And that's why I can't be biased. When I come out here and I say, Trump just picked this guy. He's a Goldman guy. I don't decide, well, because I like Trump so much, I'm going to hide that from my subscribers and just pretend I didn't know about it. No. I got to give you realist news. I can't sway from realist news. I got to keep it real. So I saw this article. It's spot on with everything I've been talking about for the last 2 to 3 weeks now, heavily focused on debt problems, etc. in our country. As you know, if you've been following my videos for the last 2 weeks, I've been hammering it. The mother of all financial bubbles. We are now living through the mother of all financial bubbles. We've been living with it so long. And by the way, I will link this site because he's got a part 2 to this. You can subscribe to them, etc. And he at least deserves that much credit for sure. I will be linking this site in my description box for your viewing pleasure. We've been living with it so long that we now have to take 3 giant steps backwards to even detect its broad outlines. As a reminder, a bubble exists when asset prices rise beyond what incomes can sustain. Florida swampland in the 1920s, tech stocks in the late 1990s, or Toronto real estate today. All are fine examples of this. The U.S. government and private banking cartel known as the Federal Reserve, in cahoots with a very compliant and complicit mainstream media, are doing everything in their vast and considerable power to convince us that we are living in a golden era of risk-free prosperity and that tomorrow will be even better. Now, regular readers of peakprosperities.com's reports will know there's a mountain of evidence contradicting this. But it's critical to understand that this is the same public perception management style as we've recently seen at Oroville, the dam, which is deny, 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 and then finally admit to the obviously, okay, mandatory evacuation, get lost. Oh, thanks for the notice. Now I can't take anything with me that I'd really like to take because it's an emergency. I got to leave. Government, thank you so much. So let's take those 3 giant steps backward and see if we can spot the flaw in the everything is awesome meme that the Fed et al. Are trying to paint for everyone by flooding the markets with so much thin air liquidity between 150 to 200 billion a month that nobody has any clue what anything is truly worth anymore. So giant step backwards, number 1. Infinite growth is impossible. This is such an easy concept that I'm continually surprised at how poorly appreciated it is and how much resistance it receives when raised. But it works like this. The Earth is a sphere and therefore has a defined surface area and a defined amount of resources available for use. The availability of these resources ranges across a spectrum of from dense to / concentrated on one end to dilute or useless at the other end. Humans have already extracted and consumed most of the easily obtainable stuff. Now it gets harder. Regardless of the economics of these resources, they are finite. And as our economy requires resources to function, if we want our economy to grow from here, that means consuming more resources at a faster rate than we have been. If resources are finite, then growth will one day prove finite too. This could be utterly, blindingly obvious to everyone. It should be. But it's not, apparently. The Federal Reserve and the central banks in other nations are unified in their call for more economic growth, always and forever. That's plan A, and there is no plan B. Giant step backwards, number 2. You can't print your way to prosperity. History is replete with the failed attempts of nations to print their way to prosperity. The pursuit operates on the same principle as alchemy, trying to get something for nothing. It has invariably and always ended the same way, in tears. At first, issuing more currency feels good because those closest to the money printing get stinking rich while doing practically nothing. As that trickles down, everybody initially feels smart and wealthier. Well, Not everybody, but those, again, running the system and close enough to it sure do. You know that show, and I'm sure some of you do, watched Gold Rush, Alaskan Gold Rush, Todd Hoffman and those guys, and Parker Schnabel. And aside from the Hoffmans making me angry constantly at their failures, and then getting together, banging their hard hats together, let's say a prayer, let's say a prayer, let's say a prayer, only to get destroyed worse the next time. Let's say another prayer, say a prayer, say a prayer. You get wrecked even harder the next time. Keep saying prayers. I don't see Parker Schnabel praying even once, and he's doing fantastic. Tony Beats. I don't see those guys praying. Matter of fact, they're cussing up a storm every day. They're doing great. It bothers me. Why do people keep doing something over and over, expecting something different? Nothing different happens. Stop freaking doing it. But the point I really want to make is that these guys, all of them, all the ones I just mentioned included, and people you never see. Bering Sea Gold, you watch that show? Those people. Just include everybody that is a super hard worker, digging in the dirt, big equipment, you name it. And I look at how much earth is moved out there in Alaska. I look at how much earth is being moved by these monstrous pieces of equipment. And it really is mind-boggling how much earth they move and then dump into these conveyors, and then they go into the shaker and all that crap. Next thing you know, they got to take the screens off. Let's go, weigh up the gold, put it in the little machine. And while sometimes they have a nice pull, we made 220 ounces today. Oh man, that's a fantastic haul for the week. But I'm still looking at it. It's still a bowl, if you will, a bowl that you could pick up, even with the 220 ounces in it. One person can pick it up and hold it. And I think of the massive amount of work that went into this for this pile of gold that's got a good value to it. Even at, today's price is at $1,230 whatever dollars, it's still good to them. And I think that's funny. The Federal Reserve and the club, they just press a button. Like I'm sitting here, just pick up this little keyboard right here, press some buttons, print some money, and I get that gold. Here's your paper money for that gold. I get the real gold, the real wealth. And I store it over here in the vaults and the, Federal Reserve. We store massive tons of gold. Why? When asked by Ron Paul, it's tradition. Tradition or not, they print pieces of paper, hand you the paper, you hand them the real wealth. Isn't that amazing? It made me think of that. The same is happening today with the thin air money printing being conducted by the world central banks, right? We are now living with one of the most extreme wealth gaps in U.S. history, with the top 1% and really the 0.1% owning a greater percentage of the nation's wealth than they ever have. But it's even more nefarious than that, because the Fed is not simply stealing from today's public. It is also stealing the prosperity of future generations. When the party being stolen from hasn't even been born yet, it can't fight back. In short, you cannot print your way to prosperity, yet somehow we've forgotten that, and we're dooming ourselves and our children and grandchildren to becoming serfs in the process. And giant step number 3, backwards, you can't grow your debts faster than your income forever. This too should be completely obvious. You know perfectly well it holds true for your personal life or your business, if you have one. And it's equally true for a nation, which is simply an aggregation of individuals and businesses. But somehow the simple truth has been either forgotten or deliberately ignored by today's economists, experts and politicians. Our grand experiment in debt-based fiat currency, unbacked by anything tangible like gold, began on August 15th, 1971, when Richard Nixon unilaterally broke the Bretton Woods Agreement and forced the entire world off the gold standard. Not that the world minded much, because this then meant that politicians and monetary hacks everywhere could ignore centuries of economic lessons and begin making exorbitant promises by printing currency like mad. The giant step towards monetary and debt expansion this represented is clear to anybody who can read a simple chart. Here's the total credit market debt in the U.S. It has exploded higher at a near perfect exponential rate since that fateful day in 1971, and I do want to share that with you, so please take a look at that. All is fine until we hit 71. And then, again, near linear. 2008 problem, '09. Oh, what's this? Oh, yep, never mind. Back on track. Back on track, right where we were. And the next one, but what we really need to do is compare debt to income. Remember, you're not supposed to grow the former at a faster rate than the latter. So let's add nominal GDP to our chart to see where it comes up. As you can see, those lines began diverging a long time ago, right about 1971. Yep, see? They've been diverging at an interesting pace for pretty much the entire adult lives of everybody in power. At this point, our leaders just assume, this is how the world works. Okay? The little wiggle in the exponential curve there during 2008-2009 was the wiggle that almost destroyed the world. Our entire system of credit and money came very close to full-scale collapse. Simply didn't, because it didn't grow for a few brief years. Makes you shudder to think about what would have happened had it actually contracted. But back to the main point. If we compare the beginning of this wanton debt binge in 1970 with the state of things today, we see that debt has shot up by a factor of 40 times, while income has only increased by a factor of 17. We have indeed grown our debts wildly faster than our income over the past 45 years. And it should it should be noted, a lot of that GDP growth is the byproduct of borrowing and spending money we don't have on things we don't need. Said differently, the debts will remain during any serious future economic downturn, but the GDP that is fraudulently based on excessive rates of borrowing will vaporize as it never existed in the first place. That, my friends, right there is the very definition of unsustainable. If something cannot go on, it won't. But the Federal Reserve, under the leadership of a pure academic like Janet Yellen, cannot conceive of any approach other than perpetuation of the same system that has been in place while she's built her career. There's a little bit more of this. He says, in part 2, how bad will it get? We detail the tremendous scale of the losses that will result when this mother of all financial bubbles bursts. It will be a traumatizing time for society, and many people will see their wealth vaporize. The key objective at this time is to position yourself for physical and financial safety. For those who do, will be in a position to prosper greatly, as well as offer much needed support to others when the coming reset arrives. Click here to read part 2 of this report. Free executive summary. Enrollment is required for full access. So I'm going to leave that to you. If you want to find out more about this, I'm going to link this again in the bottom of my description box, because Mr. Chris Martinson did a stellar job at this, put it all together. It's black and white. This is basic charts. Anyone can read these things. It's the same thing I've been screaming about lately. It's why the world's debt to GDP ratio is like 3 times now. The debt is 3 times to the GDP ratio, roughly. You can't have 3 times. It's the same. This is a smaller scale. This is our country. What I just thought, 40 times debt, 17 times wages and income, or GDP in this case. It's the same thing on the world scene. It's almost identical. 3 times. 17 times 3 isn't 40, but not too far off. Maybe 2.5 times, whatever. But the world's got the same problem for the same reasons. And we all use unbacked fiat currency. I'm telling you, as the 1988 cover of The Economist magazine said, get ready for a one world currency. They're going to sell it to us all. We will feel pain first. Remember, we can't transition into something just to do it. People don't like change. And we don't want to join a one world system. Who would want to do that? Unless you were begging for mercy financially, your job problem, whatever it is. Then you would accept it. Sir, just make the pain stop. What do we need to do? We need to join this one world system. So nobody can manipulate currencies anymore. We can't devalue them. But what about the Forex market? It's gone. Anyways, take care.